All right. Hey, John, it's great to see you face to face finally. I know we've talked several times, and I was just joking with you earlier about your LinkedIn profile pic being Kenny Powers, and you look quite different, man. Very
When
handsome man.
when you got a face like this and Kenny Powers is an upgrade, you know it's not good, John.
Come on now. Well, you were a boxer, right?
I was, yeah. It's funny. We just hired a new kid at work. He's in his 20s, and he also did Bengal bouts, and we were rehashing some of the old days. So he's in a lot better shape than I am, though. So I'm 51. He's 25. So
No kidding.
and
Oh,
he
that's
was a
wild.
heavyweight. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I was one of three kids. Had a really big family. My mom was one of 13. My dad was one of four. Pretty classic Philadelphia suburb. We all live within 2 or 3 miles of each other. Have 125 cousins that are all pretty close with. And I was the only one that really left, or the first one to leave, I guess, going out to Notre Dame for 4 years. And then when I was done, I returned, and I actually live in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania now. I have 5 kids, and Phoenixville's only about 10 or 15 minutes from where I grew up. So pretty,
Okay.
never wandered very far other than the South Bend.
Oh, right on. So what kind of a place is Pottstown?
Blue collar community. My dad worked in a factory for 42 years. My mom was a cleaning lady. She cleaned at night so she could be at home with the kids. And it was a really close knit blue collar town. So still have many of my best friends still live really close, and we've never lost touch. So it was a great place to grow up.
Nice. So did you grow up dreaming of to go to Notre Dame? How did that come about?
So my grandparents on both sides were immigrants, and so it's probably that old story, right? They grew up kind of rooting for Notre Dame because it was, I think, the university that most of the immigrants rooted for, and my uncles on both sides and my aunts all grew up loving it, and my mom was actually a bigger fan than my dad. My mom she was a bit of a lunatic. I mean, to say she was a type A personality would be an understatement. So you've got her that's crazy type A. You've got my dad that's really laid back and understated. Both love Notre Dame. And, when it looked like I was going to have an opportunity to get in, I was excited, but it was kind of an obsession, I think, for her. And, we went out to visit my senior year, and we were there for the bookstore basketball finals behind the bookstore. And I was sitting, I had my mom on one side, Lou Holtz was sitting on the other side of her, and David Rivers was sitting on the other side of me. And so, it couldn't have been a better kind of recruiting trip. I think she beat Lou's ear for about an hour. And I think on the way, the way home, it was done. If I got in, there was no other choice. That's where I was going. So.
That's wild. That's really wild. And that wouldn't be your only encounter with Lou Holtz at Notre Dame, would it?
No, I had quite a few encounters with Coach, and so some good and one not so good. I don't know. Do you want me to tell? Is this PG-13?
This is NC-17, I would say. I mean, without, we're just with words. But I would say, why don't we talk about, you and Demetrius, the first time you remember meeting him and your relationship, and then we will get into those stories for sure.
Yeah, I still remember Demo and I was a year older, so I lived in Grace Hall, and I remember he had come by my room. Actually, we were sophomores, and we were in a 6-person room, and he ended up walking by my room because we were blasting Biggie Smalls at the time on the thing, and he walked by to see 6 white kids blaring that music, and he had never heard them before, and so it was funny. He started hanging out in the room, and Actually, him and his roommate, Will. And, that's really how we got to know each other. And then we started playing basketball together. He had a real passion for basketball, as did I and a couple of my roommates. And, we ended up going to play basketball. I mean, literally every day for a while. And that's kind of where it all started. And, even by the end of that year, we played bookstore together as well that year. So
nice. What was your team name? Do you remember?
Oh God, let me think. It was, if I remember correctly, it was either Beauty and the Beast was one year, or Beauty and the Beasts, and Demetrius, of course, was the Beauty.
Yeah.
And then the other year it was Four Men with an Attitude, and there was one kid on our team whose nickname was the Attitude. So we changed over year to year. But it was funny. I probably only knew him for maybe a week, and my mom called once on a Sunday night into the room, and he happened to be sitting by the phone, and he actually picked the phone up, and he ended up having a conversation with my mom for probably 45 minutes. And then he actually hung the phone up before he ever gave me a chance to talk with her. And I said, "What?" I go, "Why did you hang the phone up?" He said, "I don't know. We were done talking." She said goodbye, and I said goodbye, and I hung the phone up. And I'm like, all right, well. So that kind of became the ritual where my mom would, she always called on Sunday nights, and it was usually she'd ask for me first and Demetrius second. So
that's amazing. That's so cool. Oh man. So how did your relationship develop then over the course of time, over the next couple of years?
Well, listen, we became very close. I mean, he was, probably the kid that I met first that I felt like was the most like me. We always joked about this. I always said to him, I never knew I was poor until I went to college because, I probably, like you, John, I grew up with a lot of people that didn't have money, right? And
yeah.
I remember sitting around one day when we were probably early in the sophomore year, because we just moved to that 6-person dorm room, and all of my roommates were kind of talking about what their parents did. And then somebody was talking about having somebody who mowed their lawn. And then somebody talked about having a cleaning lady. And I said, "What do your parents do?" And I said, "Well, actually, my mom is a cleaning lady. She cleans homes and offices at night. And my dad works in a factory." And, you didn't realize you were poor until that. And so, listen, I was fortunate. I had great roommates. They all grew up differently than I did, though, for the most part. And, Demo was one of the first kids I met that kind of grew up a little bit more like me. And so there was a bond there pretty quickly. So
I can imagine.
And, he developed a bond with both of my parents, but, like I said, my dad was really understated, but, it was weird. My mom, listen, she was close with a lot of my friends growing up, but she developed a relationship with him. Like I said, instantaneously in that first call, and, loved him like a son from a pretty early point on. And, I know he loved her. And so, I grew up a mama's boy. So, the fact that I've got this really good friend now who gets along with my mom the way he did and appreciates her for all her crazy. I mean, it was, we became like brothers pretty quick.
That sounds like it, John. And so did he ever go back home with you for Thanksgiving or anything like that? Or did he ever visit Pottstown?
He did visit Pottstown one time, and he had a great time. He got a lot of cooking. He complained that he ate way too much of my mom's Polish and Slovak cooking. But he got along really well with my friends. I mean, honestly, it was like one of those things, right? You bring that guy home, and by the end of going to play hoops for 2 hours, he felt like he grew up with everybody there. Like it was, listen, you knew him, Johnny. That's the kind of guy he was. It didn't matter who the audience was. Whatever room you put him in was familiar to him, and that's how he was. So
Yeah. And what are some of your memories together in college? Some of the things you guys did, and
well, I'll give you there's two that happened right in a row, and I remember I came out to school early my senior year, and we had a little bit of a party the first night we got out there, and I don't even remember how it happened, but I clearly had a couple drinks too many, and I don't remember if he did or not, but we ended up getting into a little bit of a tussle. And I remember he put up with me for a little while, and then he actually grabbed me. He opened the closet door and he sat me in the closet and he said, I need you to take a little time out here and come out with a different head on your shoulders, because I don't think you want this to finish the way you. So if you can imagine getting physically picked up and put in a closet to take a time out. But it was a good move. It probably saved me a beating there that I didn't want. And then
wow.
it was a couple days later. My roommate Mike Flecker had moved off campus, and Demo and I and a few other roommates went to a party off campus. And this was probably a few days before actual school started. And the party goes on, and more people come, and the next thing you know, it's out of control. The police get called, and they get to a point where they can't break this party up. And so they saw Demetrius there at the party outside with Rick Meyer, and they made a decision that they were going to throw them in the police car and take them down to the police station, and see if that broke up the party, which of course it did. A couple of my other roommates came into the house I was there, Lafayette Square, and said, "Hey, Demo and Rick just got put in the car. We got to get down to the police station and get them." So, I admittedly, again, had probably way too much to drink, but, we went down there with my roommates. We're in the police station. We get those guys out at, I don't know, it was probably 4 a.m. And we got back to the dorm room at probably 5. And by 7 o'clock, the phone was ringing, and it was Coach. And I picked up the phone, not knowing who it was, and I said, "Who is this?" And they said, "Is Demetrius there?" And I said, "He's sleeping. Who is it?" And he said, "It's Coach Holtz." He goes, "Let me to FN." And I said, "Okay."
Oh, yeah.
So I woke up Demetrius, and I said, "You guys better get out of this bed." And I went downstairs. So I go downstairs, and I see Coach in the elevator, and I said, "Hey, Coach, how are you?" And he said, "Shut the F up." And of course, my face was covered with saliva, and I didn't say another word in that whole elevator ride. And by this point, it had hit the wire. That the captains of the football team were arrested. Coach had already talked to Rick and basically asked him if he was drinking. He said no. And, we're sitting along that bed, and he said to Demetrius, and he gave us a talk. It was a great talk. I mean, he told us how disappointed he was in us, and said he had higher expectations of us. And, he gave us the one thing he said, "Guys, if you don't have higher expectations of yourself than other people have of you, I don't care if it's a boyfriend or girlfriend, a spouse, a teacher, a coach, the relationship is going to fail. And so from now on, you need to have higher expectations of yourself than I do, or we're going to have a lot more of these conversations." And he asked Demetrius if he was drinking, and Demetrius said he was. And so he suspended him for the Michigan game. And then he asked me if I was drinking, and I said I was. And he gave me 40 hours of community service in the homeless shelter and told me I couldn't come back to a game until it was done. And I said, "Well, Coach, I'm not really on the team," but I wasn't going to argue with him at that point. But he was pretty mad at the two of us. So it was, but listen, it was a life learning experience. I got to tell you, when we interview people at work, I still use that story and use that lesson that Coach Holtz gave us that morning. So
That's really cool. So do you, I mean, you had too many, what would you say like about Demetrius? How about his drinking that night? Was it like he all over the place? And was it, no.
he was actually, I mean, the MO for Demo was usually a beer or two. It wasn't really a big partier. He was, I'd like to say he was an observer of people. So I got one other story if you want a good one.
Listen, I definitely want these. I know the story that I remember the most, even though that Coach Holt's story is pretty unforgettable. I definitely want to hear, the story, the one we talked about.
The Martin Sheen one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell everyone the Martin Sheen story, John.
Yeah. We were in the room and we were, it was after practice, but before we were going out. And it was probably, I guess it was a Thursday night before a Saturday game. And, there was a knock on the door and I answered the door and the guy standing there said, is Demetrius here? And I said, no, but I said, you're Martin Sheen. And he said, that's right, I'm Martin Sheen. I said, hey, I'm John Rapchinski. It's nice to meet you. And he said, well, I said, what are you doing here? He said, well, I ran into Demetrius on campus. I'm a big fan of his. He said, he's a big fan of mine. I just came over. He gave me the address. Would love to just meet him. I have an autographed picture here of myself, and I wanted to get one of him. And I said, well, I don't know when he's coming back. I said, sometimes they go to dinner before they come back to the room. But I said, why don't you come in and just wait? And we happened to have bought a couple of 12 packs of Old English 800, and we were watching a Saved by the Bell marathon. So Martin Sheen came in and he had a drink and he told us stories about his sons and, crazy. This is before one of them went off the rails, but he gave us a lot of good stories, and he watched, a half dozen episodes of Saved by the Bell, and we waited for Demo to get there, and he got there, and honestly, it was probably a 10-minute exchange from them. Hello, how you doing? A hug, signature exchange, and that was it. So it was,
wow,
another benefit of being Demo's roommate.
Well, you got 3 hours with Martin Sheen, and he had 10 minutes.
You're not kidding.
It's pretty cool. So. And what strikes me is a really interesting aspect of that story, because that's incredible. Like a guy like Martin Sheen just show up at your dorm room, right, and hang out. But I asked Demo's family and other friends, over the years, like, did he ever mention the Martin Sheen thing? He never told anybody.
He never told anybody?
He was. Never told anyone.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, listen, I would tell you over the years, we lived, right across the hall or not too far down the hall from Ragib Ishmael. And, I would tell you that there wasn't a weekend that went by that there wasn't a line, outside of our room and outside of Rock's room of people just wanting to either get an autograph, say hello, get a picture. And, Demo was always available. And it was funny because there were celebrities that were knocking on that door frequently. He told me once, I guess Phil Donahue had come to the door and asked him for a picture with him. I'm trying to think who else. I have Vince Vaughn, right? That might, but yeah, there had to be half a dozen times where he would just casually say, oh yeah, Phil Donahue stopped by the thing and was like, really? That seems crazy to me, but okay. It's how he was. And listen, I used to laugh too, because and listen, I'm a parent of 5 kids now, so I would never let it do it. But there were dozens of times where there'd be little kids just in Grace Hall, standing outside our dorm room, waiting for Demo to come to the door to take a picture with him or sign an autograph. And he always did. And that was the kind of guy he was.
Yeah. We're gonna save the you want to save that Hendrix story for a rainy day?
Oh, come on, man.
I'll leave it up to you. We can start going to post college, or you could do that one more.
Oh my God, my roommates, they love this story, and even my high school buddies. I'll give it to you because you know it, but I'll be interested if Craig ever watches this, if he remembers it. But I started dating a girl when I was at ND, and she she had she had come to an ugly breakup with me for a football player. Well, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks later, a couple of girls come to the door and they asked for Demetrius. And I said, well, he's not here. And they said, well, do you play football? And I said, no, I don't play football. And they said, okay, goodbye. Listen, I wasn't an honor roll student. Right? So then, maybe a week passes and there's another knock on the door. The two girls there, three girls say, is Demetrius there? I say, no. And they asked the question again, do you play football? And I said, absolutely, I play football. And they said, oh, who are you? I said, Craig Hentrick. And, at the time, he was the All-American, probably punter, kicker, the whole 9 yards. We looked nothing alike now or then. And but they decided to come in and hang out. And once that started, we had the names off the door, and that was the MO. It was Craig Hentrick and Demetrius DuBose who lived together. And you roll fast forward a semester or so, and I ended up in a class, and they did roll call, and Craig was in the room, and the next day he ended up sitting in front of me and said, something to the effect of, I would have thought after all this time, I would have at least gotten a thank you note or something from you.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah, I probably never thanked Craig formally enough for that.
So Demo dropped the dime, basically, is what you're saying.
He told him. Listen, Demo didn't keep secrets well at all. So you told him something. It was out. That was for sure.
I'm like that too. I'm pretty bad. I lived with Ron Paulus during the summer before his freshman year, and we'd have those lines of people. And we don't look exactly alike, but we look a lot more alike than like you or Demetrius, right? So right. I could, and this is before Google, before people had access to looking at who was who. So I would always just like, Ron, I'm like, yeah, and put my arms around them, take pictures, and then they'd mail those pictures to him, and he'd be like, Kouris, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? So I can relate. And it was just an innocent, fun time. We had so many parties at Flanner Hall too, like, the ones you described off campus. That, love it or not, that's part of the deal. And I had some incredible times at Notre Dame. And by the end, I was really hanging out at Albert's, which was an airport bar on the west side. I would dress as Elvis Presley in a one-piece jumpsuit and sing karaoke on Sunday nights. And
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it just, man, I don't know, just so many memories, and I imagine you with Demetrius. That adds a whole nother element. Somebody with his, let's just pretend he wasn't a football player, but just his overall philosophy, talking to so many people, hearing what he is about, seeing him firsthand, knowing what a gregarious, iconic, enlightened being he was. What happened then after you graduated and he went to the NFL? Did you stay in touch while he was in Tampa?
We did. He sent me tickets to a number of games. I went to games in Tampa. I think Tampa was in Philly twice while he was there. So we went to games there, and we got to hang out a little bit before and a little bit after the games. My mom passed away in March after my senior year. So he came out for those. Actually, he had to come out right after the services because he had some tests and things at ND. So he got to spend some time with their family and with my dad, of course. And it was weird. My mom had such like I mentioned, an overpowering personality that it was kind of neat to see almost that. when he came out and actually got to spend some more time with my dad when that happened, how close they became so quickly. And it was weird. He, like I don't even know how to describe it because, my dad and I were really close. I have a brother and sister who were both very close to my dad, but, Demo, for only having spent, like I said, weekends, days, and thing, it was almost like he became another son to him. And it was somebody that my dad could lean on during that time. And I can't explain it. Most people don't have that. I don't know if it's charisma. I don't know if it's an ability to be empathetic. I can't put a word on it because, in all my time, I don't know that I've ever met anyone that had that kind of a personality and could have that quick of an impact. And, it's almost like he instantaneously built relationships with people. It's hard to explain. I never saw it before that. I haven't seen it since. So,
I mean, there are hundreds of stories to back that up. And,
yeah,
just the thinking about what he, at that time. So he's taking tests. He's also getting ready for the NFL draft, right? Right when that happens. And he, again, doesn't have a lot of money. He's still in college, but he finds a way to get to Pennsylvania to be there for you and your family.
That's who he was. And, we stayed pretty close up until probably the last time I talked to Demo, unfortunately, I think was probably my birthday, which is in May of 99. That was probably the last time. And, so it, I and my roommates and I have talked about this since then that, I remember talking to them back at that time, asking, has anybody talked to Demo? Anybody talked to Demo? And, there'd be times over the years that one of us may not talk to him for, 3, 4, 5 months, but he was talking to other people that we knew. And it was just a time factor, right? Everybody had a lot going on. He had his career, people were starting families. But I think we all kind of came to the conclusion, probably right June or July of 99, that none of us had really spoken with him. And, and then that news came in the 24th, and we got it the 25th, and, you remember where you hear that forever, right? And you can't help but think, how did you let him slip through the cracks like that? But, it's something you just, you always have with you. So, especially now during this time of year.
Absolutely. Where were you, John, when you heard the news, and how did you hear?
Actually, my dad told me. My presumption is that actually I know exactly. He woke me up. It was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 in the morning. I was at my house that we had actually just bought, and he had called the house, and he told me, he just said, and he didn't know how to say it, but he was crying, and I was worried that something happened to, family member, whatever, and he just said, he goes, Demo's dead. And I said, what are you talking about? He's dead. And he said he got shot by police last night out in California, and he didn't make it. And I hung up the phone, and back then it was hard to find information out. And I had roommates that lived in California at the time. So I tried to wake them up, and, within a couple of hours, we were all on the phone trying to piece things together. And by that point, it was, all over the TV, and was the lead story. And it was, it's hard to believe. And you know, honestly, John, the hardest part was I mean, until I talked to you a couple of months ago, I, I didn't have any information to piece any of that together during those months, and even really what happened that night, other than what I've heard, from 100 different people that weren't there or I hadn't talked to over the last, over the last 21 years. And
Yeah.
so honestly, just never feel like you got closure on it,
I'm really sorry, Rap. I just am. And sorry for your dad. I can't imagine what that was like for him. It's like you look around now and you see the older generation, like my parents are still alive in their 70s, and you start thinking, how hard it is to understand your own mortality. But what a treat it would have been to have someone from a different generation treat you like their peer, like their brother, like their friend. No difference, doesn't matter, dad, age group. But you hear Max Elson's story about him and his dad. Demo bought a Harley to be like his dad and ride it with Max's dad.
So
it's just that dude is just something else. There'll never be another one like him. And the sad thing is that, look, I didn't really examine what happened to Demo until Ferguson happened. I didn't even think twice. I read the newspapers, and it was, he was in a linebacker stance. Now, I mean, that's absurd right there, just right there. Okay, just to even imagine that. But I believed it. The linebacker stance, and he was, attacking the police. He flipped one over into a flower bed. I didn't know what had happened. I had, heard of the incident in South Bend, and it got a little wild. But, I just said, oh my God, what a tragedy, what a horrible tragedy. And I didn't think much else except just how sad I was and how confused I was at the story. And I, at the time was so broke. I had just gotten my first job, but I was living in a place in Pilsen in Chicago. And I remember my buddy and I, another former teammate, we were living together from college, and he had just gotten released by a team in the NFL. And I said, hey, RK, man, we got $20. Are we gonna buy beer, or do you want to get a pizza? And he's like, well, how about we buy beer, and we'll take those potatoes from Anthony upstairs. We'll just go knock on his door, because Anthony was like very giving. And but that's how poor I was. And I never made it out to his services, and that really bothered me, that I couldn't tell his family how sorry I was. And Michael Brown happens. I'm going through a really difficult divorce, and feeling horrible about missing my kids. I wasn't seeing my kids. And my girlfriend at the time and I, we just started doing research on it. I told her it was bothering me, and I needed to find out what had happened. A professor named Tom Weston from San Diego State put out the DA investigation report. We printed that out. I gave her a copy. I made a copy, and we went through it, and it was just like eye-opening. Like, there was first of all, that the neighbor, they had resolved this issue. That's the first thing. There was just nothing. There was nothing. And that place next door was literally next door like this, right? I mean, this far apart. Both Demo and his roommate would step over and watch the sunset. And there's conflicting reports on whether or not the woman who lived upstairs knew Demo. And in addition to that, the place had been vacant for about 6 months that year. So it was just, it it's a beach community. There's tons of intermingling. There are people going over to each other's places that don't know each other, but they live in Mission Beach. It's very common. And again, I don't understand how Charles Flynn, the neighbor, heard commotion, yet Demo's passed out on the bed.
Right.
Like, how do you hear,
None of it makes sense.
a lot of it doesn't make sense. And then, you just look at some other things, and again, you mace a guy right away without he's not shown any resistance. He's cooperated, answered all your questions. And then, they found out that he had a drug arrest. And, and the drug was ketamine, which is now a legal substance administered to people with PTSD in clinics. So, he was going through some shit. There's no doubt about it. But this is, this is months before this incident. And so he's honest about it. So they immediately arrest him. They see, a big black guy, and it's just instinct to press him for some reason. And then to mace him, that's when he took off. It's not like he just took off. They mace him. They're very confrontational. And then we know what happens. I mean, you watch the reenactment, and that's my interpretation of what happens. And I'll say that to the day I die. That's what I think happened. And there initially is 11 shots and 12 shots, and the media kind of just swallowed 12 shots. But looking at the autopsy report, 12 shots, they had 12 shots listed. And then right under the 12 shots, it says multiple wounds, most likely graze wounds from gunshot. So multiple. So I'm just saying, okay, 13 at least. I mean, that sounds more like multiple. It sounds like 15 to me. And then if you see the pictures, it's horrific. You know what I'm saying? It's just horrific and completely avoidable. So tragic and senseless and avoidable. But I also, for 15 years, just kind of wondered what happened instead of, but once I found out, that was it. I knew that I couldn't stop until everyone knows that it just wasn't as simple as how it was portrayed.
No, I agree. And I remember watching that. I think it was Brian Gumbel, Real Sports. And honestly, that might have been the last I even ever heard of it. And when you hear that, they're not only they're not the police aren't being brought up on criminal charges, but basically they were exonerated. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
A 4-year civil trial.
Right.
Yeah. So just again, strategy is to lengthen it out, get it further away from the public consciousness and people's memory, more distortion of facts, more being able to blanketly label somebody as dangerous and violent. I mean, it's crazy.
So listen, to label him dangerous and violent is a joke, right? I mean, that guy, if it weren't for, his God-given athletic ability and size, right? He didn't have necessarily a football player, killer linebacker mentality. It wasn't who he was. He was just, probably the most gifted athlete I've ever been around. And he wasn't a violent guy by any stretch. I told you, he put me in a closet. The only time we ever got in an argument, he sat me in a closet to take a time out. So just wasn't him.
Yeah.
So
I know.
And honestly, I said this to you before, if he were white, he'd be alive. No question in my mind.
And if I were black, I'd probably, with my behavior in my 20s after college and the shit I did,
right,
plenty of confrontations.
Yeah,
and I'm thankful that it never happened, nothing like that happened. But I can't say, I'm not a small guy, and I'm white.
Right. No, I know. So I would have had the same reaction that he had if I had gotten maced. I would have defended myself, and I would have run, and I probably would have been taken into custody and then, released in a day or two, like probably should have been done to him.
Yeah.
And
well, John,
my frustration, John, is though too. I mean, there's a lot of people whether it was the 4 years at Notre Dame, whether it was before that, whether it was after that, there's thousands of people that Demo came in contact with that know exactly the same thing that we're saying, but yet, I don't know. No one ever seen, I've never heard anybody speak out on it, ever. Whether it's, for the most part, whether it's teammates, classmates, other university thing. I mean, listen, this guy was, for the years he was there, he was the mayor of Notre Dame. He was the guy on that campus from the time he set foot on it to the time he walked off it. And no one seems to really give a damn that this happened to him.
Well, I think, again, I've publicly now last Saturday at the opening of the Say Their Names gallery in San Diego, where Demetrius was finally added to the names, all the names of the other victims that we know so well: George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor. The list goes on and on. But Demo's name was added to that to acknowledge that he is also a victim. And that's great. But I'm asking again, and I'm going to ask once again, that the football program, even though I know no one there really was there when he was there anymore, but we need to put number 31 on the back of the helmets this year to create a conversation piece. The people at that school that are going there, and Notre Dame also does put Black Lives Matter in their pregame hype video. They do, and I support that. But I also then expect them to allow us to tell them the story of Demetrius DuBose, or to do the research themselves even, okay? But it's obvious, and I think it's time that we acknowledge him and acknowledge that he's a tragic victim of racial injustice and police brutality. And it's just time.
I agree. I think that would be, listen, he's either one of us or he's not. I mean, they act like, some people act like he wasn't there, almost like he's not part of Notre Dame. And I would argue he was as big a part of Notre Dame as anybody I've ever known. So yeah, he should be on the helmets. And I promise you, if his number is on the helmets, you're going to have a couple of million people who are going to be a lot more aware of what's going on out there, what has been going on out there for decades, than they are now, which is the point, right? I mean, you use the forum you have. I mean,
right.
Listen, I don't even know if I mentioned it to you, but even after I graduated, I came out for a couple of football weekends. He had gotten me tickets for Florida State was the last game I was out for. And, we had hung around Dan Rudiger a number of times when, prior to me graduating. And I still remember going out there on Friday, and I was walking on campus, and I'd figured out where Demo was, and we were walking over to La Fortune, and Demo was over there with Rudiger, with the actors who were in Rudy. And, you mentioned everybody around, but yeah, I'm sitting over there and, in the Fortune with these guys. And listen, everybody at that school benefited from that. And I don't know if everybody knows it or not, but Demo was the guy that brought Rudy back to life when in 1989, 1990, 1991, like, Demo was his friend, gave him credibility. One of the reasons that movie finally got pushed out there, I mean, Rudy was tight with Demo, and that was part of it. And I think one of the reasons that ND kind of let them have a free reign of campus and do that was in part because of his relationship, Demo's relationship with Dan Rudiger. So, we're talking about a movie that's an iconic movie about Notre Dame. Did you ever, I'll bet nobody knows that, that was Demo's guy. So
yeah, I've learned, and I had, heard some stuff, that his senior year, and he's, like Rudy was letting him do his laundry over at his place, stuff like that, hanging out a lot.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
I'd love to see the number on the back of the jersey, on the back of the helmet. That would be great.
Yeah, me too, John. Well, we got to keep trying, got to keep putting it out there. He'd be doing the same stuff for someone else if it had happened it happened to either of us, and you were 10 times closer as a friend than I ever was. You know, I mean, he and I hung out several times. He saved me from quitting the team, which was my dream. And, you know, and we knew each other a lot on the practice field, just how he treated me and looked out for me as I was his little brother. And so did Devon McDonald and Carmelia McGill and Herb Smith and Jeff Burr, so many guys, Oscar, Tim Ruddy. The list goes on and on. I could go on and on, but he was special. You know, he went the extra length to really look out for you. And again, he had something about the underdog too, because he just looked out for the people that were overlooked. And, you know, the paradox is now, how in the hell could the name Demetrius DuBose be overlooked for so many years? So that's part of it. You know, he's not going to be forgotten. He's not going to be overlooked anymore. You know, I think there's a movement now behind this, and we're coming, you know, to restore his name and what it meant to so many people, and to reflect, or to really show what a complex and transcendent human being he really was. So
What do you think he'd be doing right now, John, if he were alive?
You know, I think he'd be coaching. I think he would have eventually gone back to Seattle, because I know he missed his family. And he loved, and San Diego also was home to him, and he loved being outside and in nature. But I think he was on the verge of turning it around. You know, he was starting to turn around physically, mentally at the end of his life, at the very end. And I think he would have played volleyball for a little while longer, but eventually made his way to coaching. And I know, and working with children. Demo is complicated, but he was a child at heart too. And he was an innocent child and a pure child. So I would see him like doing good, like working in places that were overlooked and neglected, and helping those, you know, children that were the same as you and him, that grew up, you know, without a lot. But that's what I saw, you know. And then look, I say that, and he could have ended up being a CEO of a company too. I mean, he was brilliant. He could have been a college professor. I mean, you name it, you know, any of those things. He could have traveled. I could see him traveling the world and having his own YouTube channel, Adventures with Demo. You know, I could see a lot of stuff.
Well, that's it. I mean, I used to say those are high class problems, right? He had so many choices. I agree with you. I was thinking, you know, coaching would have been a great field for him. Working with troubled youth. I mean, he had, you know, be able to really reach there. He was like a Pied Piper for everybody. I mean, everybody just followed him.
So this is a moment, and we've gone a long time, but I could talk to you for hours. I felt like that the first time we talked to each other. I felt a kindred spirit in you, and obviously in Demo too. So this is a time where I ask our guests to do what they couldn't do while he was here on Earth, which is to say your goodbye to Demo.
I don't know if I'm ready to do that, John.
Okay.
You know, my kids all know about Demo. I always laugh what it would have been like to have an Uncle Demo around, and you know, they probably could have all used him at different points growing up. When I made mistakes as a parent, he would have been a good person for them to be able to connect with, and maybe provide a different perspective than what they were thinking, or maybe what their dad was thinking, as he was probably making hundreds of mistakes raising them. So I'm not quite ready to say goodbye to him yet. Maybe someday I will, but I'm can't yet.
Well, don't. Well, keep him right there with you, my man. I feel like he's all around us. You know, there's weird little things happen, and I don't care what anyone believes in or not. I know what I believe in, that he's still around us, that his energy is still here. You know, I remember right when I mean, this has taken a long time to get to this point with this project and with these documentaries, but about a year and a half ago, I was taking a master class, Werner Herzog's master class on filmmaking, just as a refresher. And it was 2:30 in the morning. My computer was completely off, and I hear this just booming Bavarian voice coming out of the dining room. And I wake up, and my girlfriend at the time wakes up, and we're startled. I'm like, no one's here. Like, go out, and that masterclass is just blaring full blast. Just when I was watching his cousin interview, my lights turn off, stuff like that. His mom's radio comes on a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what I know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I loved working out with that guy. He really taught me almost how to work out. I mean, I've done sports my whole life, but he was the first guy I ever worked out with where he used to emphasize stretching and almost yoga type things to balance out the strength and the conditioning. And so it's funny you said that. I always stress that to the kids I coach, my own kids.
Yeah.
And I always think of Demo when I'm trying to teach them kind of that balanced approach to fitness. So
yeah, and I'm a huge believer in that. The guys I coached in high school, even our little league team, my son, that's the stuff that I neglected that. I mean, I hated doing that stuff.
Me too.
Me too. But that's it's function, it's form, and you build from there. It's foundational strength, and it's mental strength, and it's having the ability to breathe and stay calm in situations without thinking too much about what you're doing. It's natural.
Right.
Your movement in space, right? Rhythm in space.
That's it.
So anything else, John? This is also a time when I ask people if they can say anything about anything they want.
Oh boy. Anything about anything.
Yeah.
Let me think. Oh boy, you put me on the spot. I mean, I'm an old accountant. I don't improv that well, John.
No, you're great. I just appreciate you being with us and sharing your heart and your stories and your honesty. Again, I feel like now I mean, we've talked several times, and I'm busy, you're busy, but again, I feel like I met another friend thanks to Demo, and he keeps doing that for me, and I think for so many other people. That way, he never really can die.
No, I feel the same way, and you know what? I always think about when I think about him. The one consolation I get is I'm hopeful that he found my mom and dad up there, and they've had hopefully taken care of each other for a long time now. So
yeah, that's right. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
and you're beautiful, Rap.
You are too, John. I really appreciate you sharing all this and doing all this and leading all this. And I'm hopeful I'm going to get some coverage this weekend and maybe able to see you in California.
That'd be awesome to see you on the 24th. You have my cell. We'll talk.
I do. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
See you, Rap.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.